Here are two great comedians, one famous, one forgotten. Charlie Chaplin became the best-loved figure in the world. The other, for a while, the most despised. His name, Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. Arbuckle was once almost as popular as Chaplin. If he is remembered today, it is for a scandal which threatened the very existence of Hollywood and all but engulfed the film industry.
Arbuckle was a comedian, one of the big ones, with Chaplin and Buster Keaton and that kind of thing, and he was he was an enormously fat man, and it was part of his act. The weight fatness was part of his gags, were written around it.
Arbuckle had been in movies since the beginning. He was a pioneer comedy director. Fatty Arbuckle was considered extremely vulgar. Children loved him. It was Arbuckle who brought Buster Keaton to the screen. For all his vulgarity, Arbuckle had a quality of playful innocence. Audiences grew very fond of him. Mabel Normand and Roscoe Arbuckle played newlyweds in this Mack Sennett comedy of 1916. Here, Fatty encounters the first example of his wife's cooking. The scene is played with a warmth and charm not often found in early knockabout comedy. Arbuckle's ability as a female impersonator caused as much laughter as outrage. Films like this, which he directed for producer Joseph Schenck, were enormously successful.
he was like a brother to all the girls. We just loved him. He was a wonderful guy. There were many, many women that would jumped at the chance of, you know, being Roscoe Arbuckle's girl.
Arbuckle was soon a wealthy and respected public figure. He and Mabel Normand appeared in a promotional film for the San Francisco World's Fair. Mayor Rolfe was proud to be photographed with these ambassadors for Hollywood, and such publicity helped to build up the good name of the industry. Hollywood needed it. From the beginning, there were forces in the land trying to give it a bad name. D.W. Griffith hit back with this satire at the Purity Leagues. They condemned leisure without effort as immoral. They were for closing the theaters and shutting down saloons. In 1920, the Puritans were triumphant. Prohibition became law. The sale of alcohol was banned. But Prohibition failed to stop Americans drinking.
You bought your liquor through bootleggers, and you prayed to God that you had a good one that wouldn't sell you wood alcohol and you'd go blind. And it was not unusual for a person to take any bottle out of a case of 12, open it, and take an ounce or two, and send it up to the pharmacy to have it analyzed to see if it was safe. So the old story goes that a man sent 2 ounces up to the pharmacy, and a few days later, it came back, the report came back, sorry to inform you, your horse has diabetes.
In Hollywood, social life centered on the Hollywood Hotel, run by Mrs. Hershey.
And I want to tell you, there was nothing that went on in that hotel that she didn't know about. And everybody was scared to death of her. She had an eagle eye, and there was no, on these dances, no drinking or anything like that. Nothing like that, just dancing, that's about all. And believe me, it was a case of everybody back to their own room, too. The big night was on Thursday night. They used to clear the lobby, and we had a dance. And everybody used to look forward to that night. We were a bunch of kids making a lot of money, and we didn't think so much about being elegant.
I can remember among them was Fatty Arbuckle, who had a habit of putting a small piece of butter on his napkin and then flicking it onto the ceiling of the hotel, which created a big round grease spot and annoyed the landlady of the hotel no end. We'd go to the Ship Cafe or the Sunset Inn, whichever happened to be popular at the time, and that was our night to howl. Jack Pickford and myself, we used to be thrown out of the roller coaster almost every Saturday night because he'd stand on his head and I'd stand up yelling and screaming. We thought that was fun. Well, we didn't know what to do with anything. We'd never had anything or any money, and here we were right in the center of this goldfish bowl with everybody beginning to look at us.
Prohibition drove people to hold private parties behind closed doors. Roscoe Arbuckle was celebrated for giving parties at the slightest excuse. But he had good cause for celebration. He'd been signed by Adolph Zukor of Paramount to a contract for $1 million a year to make features like this one. It was called The Life of the Party. September 1921. Despite a post-war recession, Hollywood's confidence ran higher than ever. At the end of another working week, the studios are closing up, and the workers going home. Viola Dana leaves the Metro Studios to film night shots in the grounds of Roscoe Arbuckle's mansion on West Adams Boulevard in Beverly Hills. Arbuckle returns late that evening.
Now, kids, he said, I have to go up to San Francisco. I can't tell you why. But, he said, for God's sakes, don't die on me. And we thought that was very funny, very strange. Thought nothing of it until the next day, the papers.
Arbuckle was accused of murdering a girl in a San Francisco hotel. The scandal reverberated around the world. That same weekend in London, Charlie Chaplin was receiving a hero's welcome. He was asked about the scandal in San Francisco. I simply cannot believe it, he said. I cannot believe Roscoe had anything to do with Miss Rappe's death.
We went in those days up to San Francisco. People hadn't yet learned to go to New York, and there was no airplane. It took you 4 days to get there, and that wasn't what we wanted to do. So San Francisco was our playground from Hollywood. Everybody went to San Francisco.
At the St. Francis Hotel, Arbuckle had taken over 3 rooms for a Labor Day party and invited a group of girls, including Virginia Rappe. Virginia Rappe had adopted the screen name of Rappe, but she hadn't worked in pictures for some time.
This girl, I wouldn't call her a tramp, but she was an extra girl that made her way as best she could. And she had a habit of taking off all her clothes, prance around, see what trade she could drum up, I guess. And in those days, that was quite something. Of course, today you wouldn't even notice it.
As well as girls, there was plenty of bootleg liquor.
They got to drinking pretty heavy. What had happened to Virginia Rappe, she had trouble, and her doctor told her she should never drink. But, you know, like on a party, she drank a little too much, and so she got sick.
The story seemed clear enough to the news editors. Arbuckle had dragged Virginia Rappe to his bedroom at the height of a riotous and drunken party. He had locked the door, and despite her pitiful screams, he had brutally raped her. 4 days later, she died of a ruptured bladder. She had been brought to the party by Maud Delmont, who now accused Roscoe Arbuckle of murder in a series of statements to the press. Arbuckle realized he was in trouble. He drove to San Francisco in his new limousine and posed for the press outside the Hall of Justice. His car was later seized for carrying liquor. His accuser, Maud Delmont, was a shadowy figure, better known under another name.
Oh, Madam Black, they called her. And she would get girls, you know, for parties. And she ran a badger game. She'd get these young girls and get them on parties and have them claim that a producer or director tried to rape her. And they'd shake them down. So the district attorney grabbed her and said, look now, if you don't testify that it's Arbuckle's fault, we'll railroad you.
To his public, Arbuckle was no longer a figure of fun, but the sort of vicious criminal he played in a nightmare sequence in one of his early pictures. He did and he didn't.
The whole thing was really blown out of all proportion, I realize now, by the man who was the district attorney who was running again for office. And this was a great platform for him.
In prosecuting a star, District Attorney Matthew Brady sought stardom for himself. "This is first-degree murder," he said. "We don't feel a man like Arbuckle can pull stuff like this in San Francisco and get away with it." With Arbuckle in jail, the press wanted photographs. They faked them. Newspaper tycoon William Randolph Hearst seized the chance to boost circulation. The Arbuckle affair served his purpose in other ways as well.
Well, I think Mr. Hearst, he was probably instrumental in wanting the motion picture industry in Northern California, and instead it settled here in Southern California. And I think probably that was part of the motive of crucifying Arbuckle.
Hearst presented his version of Beauty and the Beast. Every detail they could find was fit to print.
One of the things that they condemned, they called very cruel, was when we'd be at a nightclub or anything, and we'd be with a date, you know, being very elegant, and Roscoe might come in at the same time, and he had a trick of throwing our feet out from under us, and we'd fall, but we'd land on his stomach and never get hurt. We thought that was very funny. That was just one of those tricks. But this came out in the papers as showed the cruelty of the man.
The press printed rumors as fact. The most persistent, supported by photographs like this, was that Arbuckle had committed the rape with a bottle. Ironically, in the life of the party, Arbuckle had played a district attorney fighting the milk trust.